Greeting colleagues, how are you today? So our lesson today is on claiming knowledge, which we call this powerful knowledge. How then do we go about claiming knowledge, especially in South Africa, with the new curriculum, the current curriculum, which is called CAPS. So in your chapter 10, you'll see that you have that task that you need to unpack. So when we unpack it, we'll unpack it together and see how far we can go. So the first thing that you need to do in order to extend your knowledge is that you should go to Google Scholar and search for more issues on this issue of reclaiming knowledge. What is knowledge? Knowledge is what we teach. We refer to it as content. Then in your case, when you do that, you can then check the scholars who are writing around the issue of curriculum, and then you then go to Google Scholar, you type their names, then like this is the example that you have here. So when then you have that, you'll have a list of those articles that were published by those scholars. Then make use of those. But otherwise, colleagues, remember that before 1998, we have this curriculum called Christian National Education. So it was then phased out, and then in 2020, in 1998, we saw a new curriculum which was competence-based, which was curriculum 2005. So we used that term outcomes-based education to refer to it because it's a competence-based curriculum. Therefore, the type of curriculum that we had in 1998, it was curriculum 2005, which was based on the outcomes. So we had specific outcomes that were achieved by our learners. Therefore, we called it outcomes-based education. But all in all, colleagues, then remember when we move from teacher-centeredness or content-centeredness to learner-centeredness, we declare that we are looking for a neutral position. That neutral position should be a pragmatic position where we talk about our individual needs that drive what we are doing. So in this case, then, when we say we are reclaiming knowledge, so which means we abandoned knowledge when we have curriculum 2005, and then when we had NCS, we started to bring content, which is knowledge, to combine the content with the learning outcomes that were stipulated by the Department of Basic Education. So then what was the approach there? Our approach there, when we have NCS, it was hybrid because it was combining both the technical issues, which is brought in by CAPS, and also it also had some outcomes that were brought in by curriculum 2005. So we had that kind of curriculum that was there. But we ended up moving then to curriculum and assessment policy statement, which is CAPS, because of some issues that we'll unpack in the next slide. So then when you see these three types of curriculum, then you can see that CAPS, it's a performance curriculum. It's driven by technical or product or systems or objective approach. And then the content there, it's school knowledge. So which means it's a prescribed, specialized knowledge, which is internationally recognized. So then when you see the reason for it is that learners should get the qualification. So when you follow this type of curriculum, the main aim is for you to get your qualification. And then in terms of pedagogy, is teacher-centered or content-centered. And then the drive here is the content. Then you can see in other parts where you can see NCS, which was pragmatic curriculum. It was content driven at the same time, outcomes driven. You had both. But the curriculum 2005, it has only outcomes, stipulated outcome. We had 12 critical cross outcomes that were given to any learner in South Africa to achieve during when they are doing any qualification or any subjects. Then why did we move then to curriculum 2005, to CAPS, moving from NCS, curriculum 2005, and then in 2012, we started to introduce a curriculum and assessment policy statement, which is in short is CAPS, so which was then designed in 2009. Then the question, why did we move from what we had to what we have now? So because of the ongoing criticism of from the media and education specialists and different public intellectuals who were pushing OBE away, which is curriculum 2005 with its approach, which was outcomes-based education. So that pushed it away. So because they were criticizing it to say that when our learners are given an international or national test, they fail. They are even outperformed by those who are coming from developing countries. Therefore, they felt that that curriculum 2005 and its approach was not working for South Africa because they wanted to see our learners competing internationally equally with other countries that are well developed and those that are developing. So that also was the main factor of pushing it away, to say, no, we don't need something that does not help us to compete internationally. However, it was that shift that it was surprising to see that people can shift, can push away OBE or curriculum 2005, because that shift moving away from the outcomes and starting to declare the content, to say, no, we need content now. Learners must master the content in order to move to the next level. What kind of content is that? It was international recognized content, which is school knowledge. So school knowledge was then the driver of what was happening when they pushed away OBE or curriculum 2005. But it was surprising because OBE gained quite kind of popularity. Most countries or most people are were in favor of this approach. But for these education specialists and other stakeholders, for them to manage to push it away, it was surprising because OBE achieved scriptural status where those who tried to reject it were seen as if they were anti-transformation. People want to be seen as they are transformational leaders. They are leading transformation. But now when CAPS was introduced and pushed away this OBE, which was popular like that, that was surprising. And then CAPS then imposed school knowledge to say, yes, knowledge. So in other words, if we were to teach, for example, if we were to teach our learners how to create table using computers. So what we do as teachers, we look for a specific programs, or we look for a specific table, which is a model of a table. and then we bring it to our learners. Then we also need to identify a specific program that was used to create this model of a table that we want to use as the example in our classes. And then we need some steps of using that program to create this specific table. Therefore, when we do that, we instruct our learners, work as instructors, and instruct our learners to follow the steps and steps. We drill them with this content of how to create this table, create and create and create, without necessarily helping them to use their experiences, because we believe that there's this powerful knowledge that they need before they use their experiences. So they are drilled with that. So then learners are expected then to master that content, which is full knowledge. And then after that, we will then start to say they will then pass with good marks or high marks. So KEPS managed then to neutralize that dominating progressivism, which has been dominating without considering school knowledge as part of it. So in other words, where people are saying, no, I just have to learn through my experience from my community, and then they don't go beyond that. They just keep what they have in their community and then use that as the basis of what they are doing. So then the Minister of Basic Education was then able to declare, to say that I acknowledge that there are these inequalities that were provided by Curriculum 2005 and the previous forms of curriculum. Therefore, we need to, because you can reflect, you can see the reflection of those challenges through xenophobic attacks, service delivery protests, etc. So those were the bases that the Minister Angie Motshekga used in convincing all stakeholders to say, no, let's design a new curriculum which will come with school knowledge, bring back the content. Because when we had only outcomes, people could achieve the outcomes with low level of content, or with low level of content that is only used in their areas without going beyond that. So then also during that curriculum 2005, which was driven by OBE as the approach, which is outcomes-based education. Then there were quite a number of programs that were introduced, especially in 1997, where the country was saying, no, let's go for a promotion of skills more than promoting thinking part, which is knowledge. So the knowledge, which is content, was then abandoned. So Curriculum 2005 just kicked out the so-called content and then brought the outcome to say, let's drive this with outcome. However, NCS, which was National Curriculum Statement, it started to bring a little bit of content to make it, just to cover the neutral position between the performance curriculum and competence-based curriculum. So then, but the move then, what was then happening then there? Remember in our previous lesson, we were talking about the learning outcomes, that there were learning outcomes which are statements of what learners is expected to know, understand, or be able to do at the end of a period of learning. So when they achieve that, it doesn't matter how the level of outcomes were not that much important, but what was important is that learners could achieve those learning outcomes. So learning outcomes promote skills that are generated through learning activities. Remember my example in the previous lesson where I said to demonstrate how that will work in terms of competence-based curriculum. Competence-based curriculum, if I were to teach the same table that I indicated earlier on, is that I will simply say, take the learning outcome to say today learners will be able to draw the table using any specific computer program. Then I take learners straight to the to a computer laboratory with computers, and then I introduce them to say, learners, here are computers in front of you. Please create a table. So what they will do then, they will reflect on what they do on their daily basis, what they do with their families, what they do with their societies. Then they will use that to create this particular table, where you observe that as a teacher, you may observe that one learner has used Excel, the other one has used Access, and the other one has used Microsoft Word. So all of them have created tables, but using different programs, and then those tables are also different. They are not the same. So, but the outcome has been achieved. Then you take one from those who have done it using Excel, those who have done it using Excel and Microsoft Word. You take one, you ask those learners to demonstrate in front of other learners in your class. So when they do that, they use their skill. So that's why you are saying outcomes, competence-based curriculum promotes skills, because when these learners demonstrate after this activity of drawing the table, which means they've achieved the learning outcome, now they should tell us what content they've used in order to achieve that particular outcome. So learners will do that, promoting their skills. You see, they'll use their skills to do that. So now in South Africa, then we're under the impression that if we introduce skills, skills will be our tools to help us to deal with the issue of persistent poverty, unemployment, slow growth in our economy. We thought that if we use Curriculum 2005 as a competence-based curriculum, we were thinking that it was going to promote those skills, and then we were able to address our needs of the shortage of skills. Then, but when we move, then when you look at NCS, which was trying to combine those outcomes that are capable of helping us with skills, and the content, which is the powerful knowledge, school knowledge, which help us to communicate globally with other people from other countries, etc. And then it did not go well, because even when the department started to use to say, let's use NQF levels, which is national qualification framework. When we used it to measure those skills, the outcomes to go according to certain level of complexity, it still did not work. So then, and the issue of saying we still need local knowledge still continued even when we started to produce all these changes, you see. Then now, the question of CAPS now. CAPS came in. What was that discourse? What were the discourses? The discourses around that was that CAPS should come with powerful knowledge. Content should drive our curriculum. As we can see today, that everything in that curriculum, if you have CAPS, you will see that content, it's given time to say you cover this, you cover this, you cover this, you cover this. So now when students have that, they may end up ignoring their everyday life knowledge. But when you give them this powerful knowledge, it means they'll go beyond. They will be able to bridge the gap and start to say, yes, I know what I know on my everyday basis, but what about what is known globally? That's what is happening in terms of this particular powerful knowledge. This is knowledge which is prescribed for everyone in the world. If you are doing mathematics, if it says factorization, the same factorization, you go to any other country in the world, they will be using the same content. If it is factorization, that's what it means by powerful knowledge. It's known everywhere, wherever you go. But if you still limit yourself with everyday knowledge, it means you don't have access to powerful knowledge. So the issues then were discussed, then there were reports where this OBE was rejected, etc., because it was driven by specific outcomes, so that we can have, as much as we have outcomes, but we must have content that will generate, that will connect us to what the world is talking about, and then we deal with it from there. So what then happened is that in order to bring this powerful knowledge, which framed CAPS, which is driving CAPS, is that the Minister of Education introduced a ministerial review committee that reviewed everything. And then there were submissions from different teacher unions, stakeholders, and then the committee had those representatives from unions, from public, from publishers, different stakeholders were participating. Then this committee then started the issue of information gathering. What was happening there? They were consulting, going to different places, hearing what teachers were saying about curriculum. Although teachers did not want to take advantage of this, because as much as they were participating with hundreds of teachers packed in halls where this committee was trying to collect data or generate data, but teachers left the powers to the committee to say, you must now carry on. We gave you some clues on what we need. Then they started to carry on with that. That's why they ended up designing a performance curriculum, which is content driven. So, but different stakeholders were able to contribute towards what they needed to see in that new curriculum. As you see, non-governmental organization and others, they started to deal with that issue. But what did this committee then drive this curriculum towards? They drove this curriculum towards what we call discipline-based principles. So discipline-based principles is that they started to say, no, you know what? Our research informs us that if we want to compete with other countries, if we want to compete globally in terms of our learners, we need to go back to subjects instead of learning area. We had learning area there where you could see that mathematics, technology, and science were together to form one learning area. So in other words, if you have a formula that you have used in mathematics, you should be able to use the same formula to solve issues of physics, to solve issues of technology, because it's one learning area. So they were integrated. Now, what is the problem with that? The problem is that when that is happening, when this formula from mathematics is used in the other which means the formula is not advanced enough to exclude the other subjects. So which means the formula is at the average level or lower level because it can be used for something else. But with powerful knowledge, each subject has its own formula and principles that may not be applicable to any other subject because those subjects need advanced formula. Therefore, you can't just take a formula that was designed to be used, for example, by South Africa, and then you take it to be used by England, for example, which means that South African formula is not advanced enough to be able to discriminate England. So if it can be used just like that, it's taking the competence-based approach, which is generally can be used for anything. But yet here, when you talk about powerful knowledge, we need something. If it is for mathematics, it has to be for mathematics. If it is for South Africa, it has to be for South Africa. It should be advanced enough that if you take it to England, you should adjust it, or you teach people from England on how this thing is used. But if they can just use that, they can use it without asking a permission from you, it means that's not powerful knowledge. And then other disciplines participated well. I remember history department started to push their boundaries to say, want to see this kind of history, and then they reshaped it, and then they put it in the curriculum. They came with history that will help South Africa to start by looking at South African identity and then go advanced. And then educators then had to change from being educators to teachers because we wanted people to teach, because remember, educators include even the Minister of Education, because anyone who is involved in education is called educator. But in this case, then they wanted to make sure that teachers are known as teachers who will be in the classroom situation and teach learners there. So as a result of that, then CAPS then started now the issue of bringing this specific powerful knowledge. So with that, then we could measure the approach, the implicit approach that was used there. So that's why Moss started to say, you know what, when you deal with this issue of powerful knowledge, you need to distinguish between reading for proficiency in when we're talking about reading literature, reading whatever we read for generating that powerful knowledge or that content. So now it's distinguishing between the proficiency, the reading for proficiency, and reading for choice. Reading for choice, it's still about everyday knowledge where you read novel just to enjoy. But reading for proficiency is where you are reading in order to solve problems of your specific subject. So once you solve this one, you go to the next level and solve the next one and the next one. You can solve all those nicely, and then you have your situation where you claim that I've used powerful knowledge. But in this case, then other scholars will then start to say, no, maybe it's better to marry the two, to combine the two. But when do you combine that? You need to understand it well when you read now for proficiency and when you read for what you call for just for enjoyment. So you need to be aware of that. There's that difference. But with powerful knowledge, which we are claiming, we are reclaiming, because it was ignored during the time of curriculum 2005. We are reclaiming it back now. CAPS has reclaimed it, has reclaimed it. Now it's back with us. Now learners have their responsibility to master the subject content. And then teachers, they have their responsibility to follow the prescribed content in instructing learners to learn. So they have their different responsibility. I think good people with those indication, you will be able to read the chapter and see how far you can go. And then after that, if you have a question around these issues, let us know so that we can still unpack them. But basically, that is how this chapter is summarized. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Continue with your reading and see how far we can go with the reading. But the summary that I've presented here is just the frame of why we moved to curriculum, to this new curriculum, which is CAPS. And then from there, you can see how far we have gone in South Africa. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy.